Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Whispering Forest. Holly Arnold had always felt a deep connection to nature, and the Isle of Wight had been her sanctuary since childhood. Its serene beaches, rolling hills, and ancient woodlands offered an escape from the chaos of her city life. So, when her best friend, Emily, suggested a weekend hike through the lesser-known forest of Rowland's Copse, Holly jumped at the chance. The two of them, along with their mutual friends Tom and Jack, packed their gear, eager for an adventure. Rowland's Copse was said to be one of the oldest forests on the island, a place where the trees had stood for centuries, witnessing the passage of time and the secrets it carried. Locals spoke of strange occurrences there, of people hearing voices carried by the wind, of shadows that moved just out of sight, and of the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Most dismissed these as old wives' tales, but as Holly and her friends drove towards the forest, she couldn't shake the sense of unease that gnawed at her. The entrance to Rowland's Copse was marked by a wooden sign, weathered and covered in moss. As they crossed the threshold, the sunlight dimmed, filtered through the thick canopy above. The air was cooler here, carrying the earthy scent of damp leaves and rich soil. The trees stood tall and proud, their branches intertwining like the fingers of ancient giants. It was quiet, unnervingly so, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. "This place is incredible," Tom remarked, breaking the silence as he adjusted the strap of his backpack. "I can't believe more people don't come here. Maybe that's a good thing," Emily replied, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "It feels different," Jack, always the skeptic, laughed. "Come on, Em, don't tell me you're scared. It's just a bunch of trees." Holly smiled, but the unease in her chest only grew stronger. She could feel it too, the subtle rawness in the air, like the forest was alive and watching them. They pressed on, following a narrow trail that wound deeper into the woods. The further they went, the thicker the underbrush became, and soon the path was little more than a suggestion, half obscured by ferns and creeping ivy. Hours passed, and the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Holly noticed how the trees seemed to lean closer together, as if conspiring. She shook off the thought, telling herself it was just her imagination running wild. But then she heard it, a faint whisper, so soft she almost thought she was imagining it. "Did you hear that?" she asked, stopping in her tracks. The others paused, looking at her with curiosity. "Hear what?" Tom asked. Holly strained her ears, but the sound was gone, replaced by the rustling of leaves in the breeze. "Nothing," she said, forcing a laugh. "Just the wind, I guess." But as they continued, the whispers returned, growing more distinct with each passing minute. It wasn't just one voice, but many, overlapping in a discordant murmur. Holly's skin prickled with goosebumps, and she noticed the others beginning to glance around uneasily as well. "Okay, now I hear it," Emily said, her voice trembling. "What is that?" "Probably just the wind through the trees," Jack said, though even he didn't sound convinced. Well, Holly knew it wasn't the wind. The whispers were too deliberate, too purposeful. They carried words, fragmented and distorted, but words nonetheless. Up, the trapped, lost. Her heart pounded as she realized what the voices were saying. "We should go back," she said, her voice tight with fear. "I don't like this." Tom nodded, his face pale. "Yeah, let's turn around." But when they tried to retrace their steps, they found the path had vanished. The forest had closed in around them, the trees pressing closer, their branches intertwining overhead like a cage. Panic set in as they realized they were lost, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. "Where's the trail?" Emily cried, her voice rising in terror. Holly spun in circles, trying to find any sign of the way they had come, but the forest was a labyrinth, shifting and changing with every step they took. The whispers were louder now, almost a chorus, and Holly could make out more words. "Don't leave. Stay. Forever. We have to keep moving," Jack said, his bravado gone, replaced by sheer panic. "We'll find a way out." But the more they walked, the deeper they seemed to go, the trees growing thicker, the air colder. Holly felt a cold dread settling in her bones, the realization that they were not just lost, they were being hunted. The whispers seemed to follow them, echoing in their minds, growing louder and louder until they were deafening. Holly clapped her hands over her ears, trying to block them out, but they seeped into her thoughts, twisting her perception. She stumbled, falling to her knees, and the forest seemed to close in around her. The ground was soft and damp beneath her fingers, and when she looked up, she saw them, the faces in the trees. Twisted, anguished faces, their mouths open in silent screams, their eyes hollow and empty. They were part of the bark, their features contorted in eternal torment. "Holly, get up," Tom shouted, pulling her to her feet. "We have to keep moving," but Holly couldn't take her eyes off the faces. They were everywhere, in every tree, every branch, every root. She could feel their pain, their desperation, their hopelessness. The whispers weren't just voices, they were the spirits of those who had been trapped here, lost to the forest's malevolent will. "They are all around us," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We're not alone." The others saw them too, their faces pale with fear. Emily clutched Holly's arm, her eyes wide with terror. "What do we do? How do we get out?" Holly didn't have an answer. The whispers were inside her head now, filling her mind with darkness. She could feel the forest pulling at her, trying to draw her in, to make her one with the trees. "Don't listen to them," Jack said, his voice hoarse with desperation. "We can't let them get to us. We have to keep moving, find a way out," but the forest had other plans. The ground beneath them began to shift, the roots rising like serpents, coiling around their ankles, pulling them down. Holly screamed as she was dragged towards the earth, the whispers now a cacophony in her mind. "Stay with us, join us, forever." She struggled, fighting against the roots, but they were too strong, their grip unyielding. She felt herself sinking, the earth swallowing her up, the darkness closing in. "Holly!" Tom shouted, trying to reach her, but the roots ensnared him too, pulling him down. Emily and Jack were already half buried, their screams muffled by the soil. Holly's vision blurred as the cold earth covered her, filling her mouth, her lungs. The last thing she saw before the darkness claimed her was the twisted faces of the trees, their hollow eyes watching her with a terrible hunger. The whispers grew faint, then silent, as the forest claimed its new victims. The trees stood tall and proud, their branches swaying gently in the breeze, as if nothing had happened. The sun set, casting long shadows across the forest floor, and the Isle of Wight was once again quiet, save for the soft rustling of leaves. Roland's copse would stand for centuries more, his secrets buried deep within the earth, its whispers reserved for those who dared to venture too far. The locals would continue to tell their stories, warning of the dangers that lurked in the woods, but few would listen, and those who did would never return to tell the tale. For in the heart of the forest, where the trees whispered dark secrets and the shadows danced with malice, Holly Arnold and her friends had become just another part of the legend, their voices joining the chorus of the lost and the damned. And the forest whispered on, waiting for its next visitors, ready to claim them too. The Whispering Forest Part 2. The Isle of Wight had always been a place of whispers, of legends and old wives' tales passed down through generations. Yet nothing had shaken the community quite like the disappearance of Holly Arnold and her friends. The police had scoured Roland's copse, but the dense forest offered no clues, no traces of the missing hikers. As days turned into weeks, the search was eventually called off, leaving behind a deep sense of unease that settled over the island like a shroud. But the story of the Whispering Forest didn't end with their disappearance. 6 months after Holly and her friends vanished, a new group arrived on the island. They were not locals, but tourists drawn to the Isle of Wight by its mysterious allure. Among them was a journalist named Claire Walker, a woman known for her fearless pursuit of the truth. She had heard the rumors about Roland's copse, the whispers, the disappearances, the strange occurrences, and her instincts told her that there was a story here, one that needed to be uncovered. Claire had been following the trail of the supernatural for years, uncovering mysteries that others dared not touch. She had written about haunted houses, cursed objects, and strange phenomena, but something about the Whispering Forest called to her in a way nothing else had. It was as if the forest itself was beckoning her, drawing her in with its dark allure. She wasn't alone. Joining her were her photographer, Mark, a grizzled veteran who had seen his fair share of eerie sights, and Sarah, a paranormal investigator who specialized in communicating with spirits. Together, they believed they could uncover the truth about what had happened to Holly Arnold and her friends. They arrived at Roland's copse on a cold, overcast morning. The forest loomed before them, its ancient trees standing like silent sentinels. The air was thick with tension, as if the forest was aware of their presence and was waiting, watching. Claire took a deep breath, steadying herself. "This is it," she said, her voice firm. "If there's any place that holds the answers, it's here." Mark nodded, adjusting the strap of his camera. "I don't like the feel of this place. Feels heavy." Sarah closed her eyes, trying to sense the energy of the forest. "There's something here, all right," she murmured. "I can feel it, like a pulse, an old, dark energy. We need to be careful." With that, they entered the forest, the path quickly swallowed by the dense underbrush. The further they ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air was thick, almost stifling, and the trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches intertwining overhead like a web. They moved deeper into the woods, following the faint trail that twisted and turned through the forest. Every step seemed to echo in the silence, and Claire couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The whispers started soon after they entered, soft at first, just at the edge of hearing. "I've lost. Stay." Claire stopped, her heart pounding in her chest. "Did you hear that?" Mark and Sarah exchanged uneasy glances. "I hear it," Mark said, his voice low. "It's like voices, but I can't make out what they're saying." Sarah shivered. "They're not just voices. They're spirits trapped here, bound to this place. We need to be very careful." As they continued, the whispers grew louder, more distinct, filling the air with a sense of dread. Claire's pulse quickened as she recognized the pattern. These weren't random voices. They were the voices of the lost, of those who had vanished into the forest and never returned. They reached a small clearing, the ground littered with dead leaves and twisted roots. The trees here were older, their trunks gnarled and covered in thick moss. The whispers intensified, swirling around them like a storm. Sarah knelt, placing her hands on the ground. "The spirits are strongest here," she whispered, closing her eyes. "This is where it happened, where they were taken." Mark snapped photos, his hand shaking slightly. "Taken? You mean like possessed?" "No," Sarah said, her voice strained. "Was. They were consumed by the forest, absorbed into it. Their souls are trapped, bound to the trees. That's why we can hear them. They're trying to reach out, trying to warn us." Claire felt a cold dread settle over her. "Can we help them? Can we free them?" Sarah shook her head, her expression grim. "I don't know, but we can try." Suddenly, the whispers stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to deepen, closing in around them. Claire's breath caught in her throat as she saw them, the faces in the trees, twisted and contorted, their eyes hollow and filled with despair. "They're here," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "The spirits, they're all around us." Mark took a step back, his camera at the ready. "What do we do?" But before Sarah could answer, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The roots, thick and gnarled, began to move, writhing like serpents. They rose from the earth, coiling around their legs, pulling them down. Claire screamed, struggling against the roots, but they were too strong. The whispers returned, louder than before, filling her mind with a cacophony of voices. "Stay with us, forever." She could feel the forest pulling at her, trying to drag her into the earth, to make her one with the trees. The darkness closed in, and for a moment she saw them, the spirits of the lost, their faces twisted in agony, their mouths open in silent screams. "Fight it," Sarah shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos. "Don't let them take you." But it was too late. The roots tightened their grip, dragging them down into the earth. Claire felt the cold soil closing over her, the darkness swallowing her whole. The last thing she heard before the world went black was the sound of the whispers echoing in her mind. "Join us." When the locals found their bodies days later, they were buried deep in the forest, entangled in the roots of ancient trees. The coroner could find no cause of death, and the official report listed the case as unsolved. But those who knew the island's legends whispered among themselves, telling of the forest that claimed those who ventured too deep. Roland's copse still stands, its trees tall and silent, their branches swaying in the wind. The whispers continue, carrying the voices of the lost, calling out to those who dare to listen. And the forest waits, patient and hungry, ready to claim his next victims. The legend of the Whispering Forest lives on, a dark tale that is told in hushed tones, a warning to those who would venture into the woods. But there are always those who don't heed the warning, who are drawn by the mystery, by the allure of the unknown. And for them, the Whispering Forest waits. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.